I'm here to tell you the story of my search for Isobel Gowdie, who in 1662 confessed to witchcraft in Aldern, Scotland. Isobel's confession is so famous because it was so unusual. She not only confessed to the standard statements that may have been fed to her, such as, "Who did you curse?" and "Did you say this? Did you do that?" or "Did you have sex with the devil?" "Yes, I had sex with the devil." She elaborated and embellished her confession. She talked about flying through the night with the fairies and communicating with the Queen of Fairies. Her confession, over the course of 4 weeks, was recorded verbatim. Now, at that time, the Scottish Reformation, there were lots of wars and bloody battles going on. Protestants against Catholics, English against Scots, Episcopalians against Presbyterians. It was chaotic. The way I discovered Isobel's story was through tracing some of my ancestors from that time. Many of them, I found, were Covenanters in Scotland. Covenanters, it turns out, were instrumental in starting the Scottish Reformation. They had signed the National Covenant, and no king could tell them what to believe or how to worship. They were idealistic and morally rigid, and they ended up defeated by the English in 1679, ending their lives here in the Covenanters' prison, which became their graveyard. The Covenanters were earnest new Protestants with firm beliefs, while in their midst lived the ordinary folk who believed in all the old folk traditions and magic. I discovered that the Covenanter communities were the places where many witch trials occurred. So the Covenanters, along with the other church people, Catholics and Protestants, were trying to obliterate the old superstitions. The cunning women, like Isobel, represented these superstitions that had to go. Thus the witch trials. Those accused of witchcraft were mostly women. And looking back, I could see the roots of a misogyny, hatred of women, that undergirded the new patriarchy that was taking over in the 17th century. John Knox was the hero of the Covenanters. Knox had preached some idealistic ideas that came from Calvin, ridding the church of corruption, sharing the wealth with the poor. He was a brilliant theologian, but he also promulgated misogyny through this tract, the first blast of the trumpet against the monstrous regimen of women, which he wrote in opposition to the Queen Mary. It was unnatural for women to be in charge of anything and to rule, and it was not biblical, and it was evil. Well, 50 years later, the king, King James, the, quote, high and mighty ruler of England, Scotland, France, and Ireland, published this book, Demonology, wherein he proved that anyone who practiced magic was a witch, a demon in human form, and therefore had to be destroyed. So these kinds of ideas then fueled the witch craze, which was at its height in the 1600s. The Moray region, like much of Scotland, is an open land of rolling plains and moors. These are some pictures from when I visited a few years ago. I really got the feeling of vastness and boundlessness there. A place that's very conducive to reflection and spirituality, legend and myth. Here is a farm town, like the one where Isobel lived and worked. But what did Isobel believe? I wanted to find out. I studied her confessions and the scholarly writings about her. Isobel was a cunning woman, a leader in her community, performing healing cures as well as curses. She communicated with the fairies. She talked of riding through the night with the fairies and the devil. Here's an illustration of the wild hunt, which is an archetype found throughout Europe and the world in folk cultures. People talk of flying through the night and performing evil deeds. Isobel said she killed a few people in her night flights by flicking an elf arrow, which we call arrowheads. Isobel claimed she could shapeshift. She turned herself into a cat, a hare, a crow. Here's a quote from her confession.